Welcome to another episode of my live stream, My Journey to the Trinity. I talk here about what it's like to have come from a Muslim background and how my situation is now as a Christian. And my situation is good, praise be to God. One thing I like to talk about is different aspects about the Bible and about the Quran, about my struggles in learning Christian doctrines, for instance, the Trinity, the deity of Jesus Christ. And I always like to talk about the Bible and about the Quran. And today, I've been doing kind of a series of things of episodes about the prophecies about Jesus, because there are prophecies, over 300 prophecies in the Old Testament about Jesus's first coming. It's about 500 prophecies about his second coming, and we're living in those times right now. And I will be talking about prophecies about the end times too. But the thing about the Bible that makes it so different, so unique, is that it has these prophecies. It's the only book in the world that does this. It's the only book in the world that does this with such amazing detail. It tells you what's going to happen in the future, where it's going to happen, when it's going to happen. Today, as you can see from my little thing here, is 700 years before Jesus was born. There was a prophet named Micah. This is 700 years before Jesus was born. There was a prophet named Micah, and he prophesied about the birth of Jesus, the birth of the Messiah. And he said, "But you, Bethlehem Ephratah, though you are small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come for me one who will be ruler over Israel, whose origins are from of old, from ancient times." So this prophecy, the Bible predicts exactly, when Jesus was going to come to earth. And it predicts, and I'll do prophecy. I'll do an update about when the prophecy that tells when he was going to come, which is one reason why the three wise men came from the three wise men who came from the east. They came because they used to know the one who made that prophecy, who was Daniel. They were like disciples of Daniel, who was over all of the Magi in the Media Persian Empire. And so, but today I want to talk about where he was going to be born. Now, this is 700 years. Now, just think about 700 years. Like, what happened 700 years ago? 700 years ago, well, you know that Shakespeare hadn't yet written his books, his plays and stuff 700 years ago. America didn't even exist 700 years ago, and if you think about, it was 400 years ago that the Pilgrims landed in America. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. When is that? 1492. That's almost 500, more than 500 years ago. But this is more than 500 years. This is 700 years ago. 700 years before it happened, the prophet Micah predicted where Jesus would be born. He predicted where Jesus would be born. And where was he to be born? It says, "But you, O Bethlehem." And Bethlehem, I've been there many times. I lived there a while because it's in the Holy Land. And I used to live in a place called not Beit Sahur. There's another one, Beit Jala. I used to live in Beit Jala, which is north of Bethlehem. And I lived there for a little while. Not north, I think it's east. I can't remember, but it's up in the hills there. And it was at the beginning of the second Intifada. I lived in Beit Jala, and so Beit Jala is right next to Bethlehem. And from Beit Jala, every day I would, in order to go to Jerusalem or to go to Ramallah, I would go down into Bethlehem and take a taxi over to Jerusalem or into Ramallah. And I lived there for a couple of months in Beit Jala, which is right next to Bethlehem. So I was very close to Bethlehem. I've seen Bethlehem many times. I love Bethlehem. I love going there. It's a place where it's the first place that Israel kind of handed over to the Palestinians, and it's the place where there's a Knesset al-Mahid. It has the Knesset al-Mahid, which is where Jesus is believed to have been born. This picture right here about Jesus with Mary and Joseph, that took place in Bethlehem. And 700 years before Jesus was born, the prophet Micah said that where Jesus would be born. 700 years before he was born. And it says, "You, O Bethlehem of Ephrathah, though you are small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come to me one who will be ruler over Israel." The origins are of old, from ancient times. There's really two very humongous prophecies in this prophecy. As you see with a lot of the prophecies of the Bible, they are so detailed. Like recently I did a thing. I've been doing about prophecies, different prophecies, and the different prophecies that I've done so far. I just want to show you the prophecies that I've done so far that are absolute scientific proof that the Bible is from God. It is scientific proof that, because it's impossible that someone foretell the future. It's impossible that somebody foretell the future like this, but the Bible does. And the Bible tells the future with amazing specificity, and it's always right. And so, which proves that this book is from God. There's no other book like it. There's no other book that tells the future like this. That's why Muhammad never said that that's why Muhammad never said that the Bible is corrupt. That's why Muhammad never said that the Quran is supposed to replace the Bible. Muhammad never said that. Muslims say that. Muhammad never said that. Muhammad said 15 times in the Quran, he said that the Quran came to affirm what is in the Bible. Illi bain idehum. Affirm مصدقا لما بين إيديهم مصدقا لما بين إيديهم. This is what's بين إيدينا. And the Quran came musaddiqan, to affirm the Bible, not to replace it, not to correct it, not to take it out of the way, not to delete it, not to yansakhu nasikhu mansukh. No, it came in order to affirm the Bible. And so anyway, but these are some of the prophecies that I've talked about already. And you can go back and see my videos. I've done 2 other videos. It really turned into more like 4 videos because I had questions and comments that I wanted to respond to. Number 1, 1,000 years before Jesus was born, the prophet Dawood, who is David in English, the prophet David predicted the crucifixion, predicted that Jesus would be crucified. And it's in Psalm 22. And David predicted what David predicted, and Nebi Dawood predicted what Jesus would say when he was on the cross. He said, my God, why have you forsaken me?" That's the first verse of Psalm 22. He said what the priests would say when Jesus was on the cross. David predicted the crucifixion as if he was on the cross. It's as if he's on the cross looking down. And it says that he predicted what Jesus would say on the cross. He said, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Jesus said that on the cross. Those are the first words of Psalm 22. 1,000 years before Jesus was born, in the Zabur, Psalm 22, David predicted the crucifixion. It predicted also what the priests and the Jews would say as they were looking at the cross. He said he trusted in God. If God delights in him, let him save him. David wrote that in Psalm 22. Read Matthew 27, because in Matthew 27, that's exactly what happened. The priests were looking at Jesus. Said it said that he trusted in God. If God delights in him, let him save him. Exactly what the priest said. Exactly what Jesus said. These prophecies are so amazing. Then it says they pierced my hands and my feet. Taqabu yadayya wa rijlayya. David predicted that, verse 16 of chapter 22. Also, it said that they would gamble for his clothes. They cast lots for my clothes, which it's predicted in Psalm 22, and it's also predicted in it was fulfilled in Matthew 27 and in Mark. I think it's in all four gospels that they gambled for his clothes. And then it's also what actions the passer buyers would say. It says in Psalm 22 that the people would rock their head, would nod their head, said, "Oh, you who builds the temple and destroys it in 3 days, let's see if you can save yourself now." If you look in Matthew 27, it says that the passersby, they nodded their heads and said, "Okay, let's see, if you who would destroy the temple in 3 days." So you got it. There's so many prophecies in Psalm 22. It's called the fifth gospel. It is so amazing. You learn more about the crucifixion. You learn more about the crucifixion from Psalm 22 than you do from the Gospels. It is so amazing. Written 1,000 years before Jesus by Nebi Dawud. Nebi Dawud. Nebi Dawud. Do you know the prophet of the prophet David? Go read the Mazamir. Go read the Zabur. Go read what's in the Psalms. And Nebi Dawud wrote those. And then 600 years before Jesus was born, the prophet Zechariah predicted that Jesus would be sold for 30 pieces of silver. He would be sold for 30 pieces of silver. And also it says that they would take that money and throw it into the house of the Lord, which is the temple. And that's exactly what happened. Judas threw it into the temple, the house of the Lord. And then that it would be, and it says specifically who it was thrown to. It says, throw it to the potter in the house of the Lord. Now, if you know, when Judas threw the money into the temple, the Jews said, we can't keep this money in the temple because it's blood money. And so 30 shekel, تقريبا 30 shekel, hello sahlan Nasser. So they took it and they bought a potter's field. They bought a potter's field with that money. Well, Prophet Zechariah, 600 years before Jesus was born, predicted that they would sell Jesus for 30 pieces of silver, that it would be thrown into the temple, and that it would be used for a potter's field. And it was fulfilled exactly like the prophet Zechariah said. And so it just proves to you that this book is from God. It cannot be changed. It's impossible to be changed. It never was changed. It is alive, and it's the only book in the world that tells the future. It's the only book in the world that tells the future so detailed. There are 300 prophecies about Jesus before he was born, and another 500 about his second coming. And this book, his book is, and this prophecy proves that this book is from God. My cousin Nasser is asking, was Jesus born a normal birth? His birth was normal, but his conception was not. He was born normally, but the conception, and I'm مش عارف الكلمة بالعربي, but the conception, that's when he was conceived in his mother's womb. That was by the Holy Spirit. That was a miraculous conception. He did not have an earthly father. He had a heavenly father. Gabriel said, that which will be born of you will be called the Son of God. And as the prophets also said. So anyway, today I wanted to look at the prophecy about where Jesus would be born, because the Bible predicted 700 years before Jesus was born. The prophet Micah said, O Bethlehem Ephrathah, though you are small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come for me one who will be ruler over Israel, whose origins are from of old, from ancient times. 700 years before Jesus was born, the prophet Micah, Micha in Arabic, predicted that Jesus would be born in Bethlehem, right next to Jerusalem. And if you're Palestinian, you knew that if you're Palestinian, you know where Bethlehem is. You've probably been there. You've probably been to Kanisat al-Mahid. It's the Church of the Nativity. It's right there. ليش ما نزل من السماء بدون ولادة? My cousin Nasser is asking a question. Sometimes he asks good questions. Sometimes he just makes fun of me. But today he's asking a pretty good question. He says, why did Jesus not just come down from heaven without being born? without being born, because to Muslims it's seen as a kind of a nasty thing that he had to be born like we are born. But there's a verse in scripture. Let me just tell it to you. There's a verse in the Bible that tells why he was born the way he was. It's in the book of Hebrews. And let me just go to you. Let me just go there. Okay. I want to read it to you exactly as it says. Okay. It's in the book of Hebrews. It says, Jesus is not ashamed to call them brothers and sisters. He's not ashamed of the stuff that is in our lives. He's not ashamed of all the parts. He came to partake in what we are, and he wasn't ashamed. And listen to this, Nasser, if you can listen. This is in Hebrews chapter 2. It says, since the children being the children of God, the humans, have flesh and blood, he too shared in their humanity, so that by his death he might break the power of him who holds the power of death, that is the devil. Let me see if I could read this in Arabic. I know I don't know. I've never talked to you in English, and I don't know how your English is. Let me read it to you in Arabic. إذن بما إن هؤلاء يعني الأولاد متشاركون في جسام بشرية. إذن بما إن هؤلاء الأولاد متشاركون في أجسام بشرية من لحم ودم، اشترك المسيح أيضا في اللحم والدم بيتخذوا جسما بشرية، وهكذا التمكن إن يموت ليفضي على له سلطان الموت أي إبليس، ويحرر من كان الخوف من الموت، ويستعبدهم طوال حياتهم. يعني الناس البشرية كلهم خايفين من الموت، لكن المسيح غلب الموت مشان يحررنا من الخوف. شايف؟ It's such a powerful passage. I just love to read. I just want to read that one more time. It's just such a beautiful passage. It says, since the children have flesh and blood, he too shared in their humanity, so that by his death he might break the power of him who holds the power of death, that is the devil. And look what else it says over here. And free those who all their lives were held in slavery by their fear of death. See, يعني عشان هيك, my cousin asked, why did the question, ليش ما نزل من السماء بدون ولادة? Why didn't he come down from heaven without being born? That natural birth and going through the birth canal now, with the, afterbirth and all those issues. Why did he have to go through all of that? It's an amazing passage. It's an amazing passage. It says, so Jesus is not ashamed to call us brothers and sisters. He's not ashamed. Jesus is not ashamed to call us brothers and sisters, because he became one of us. And because the children have flesh and blood, he too shared in their humanity. Wow. Amazing, amazing passage. Thank you for asking a good question. uh, انت بدك تبين حاجة وسخة بس هي مش وسخة. He's not. تعرف ممكن انت مستحي من هذا الاشي لكن it says he was not ashamed to call us brothers. He's not ashamed of our humanity. He's not ashamed of the bad things. I mean, there's parts of our humanity that are shameful, going to the bathroom, doing all that kind of stuff, sweating, being smelly. It says he was not ashamed to call us brothers. Here my cousin has asked, it says God was born from the womb of a woman. Is there a God who was in the womb of the virgin? Yeah. Yes. أقرأ لك إياها كمان مرة. Let me read it to you one more time. Since the children have flesh and blood, he too shared in their humanity. اشترك إن هؤلاء الأولاد تشاركون في أجسام بشرية من لحم ودم. اشترك المسيح أيضا في اللحم والدم. We all have the human. We all were born that way. You were born that way. And he wanted to be like us. He came to earth to live life like us. A lot of people, when they're born, they have problems in their birth. Some people come out deformed. Some people come out, with mental, physical problems, issues because of the birth process. So a very big, in fact, they say that much of a human being's emotional condition through their lives was based on what happened when they were in the womb. So the time that you are in the womb is a very important part of your whole life. It affects the rest of your life. That sometimes they say if a mother was planning to have an abortion, that the kid could feel that. The kid in the stomach could feel that. And for the rest of their life, they're wounded because of that mother's desire to have an abortion, to kill the baby. Sometimes they say that, a baby isn't wanted. The baby feels that. In the stomach, in the womb, the baby feels it. For the rest of their lives, they feel that. Now, sometimes a baby is wanted and everybody loves them. The baby comes out and is so happy. And why? Because they know they're wanted. They knew in the womb that they were wanted. So being in the womb is a very important part of who we are. Being in the womb is a very important part of who we are. And so Jesus came to experience everything that we experience as human beings. It says, since the children have flesh and blood, he too shared in their humanity, so that by his death he might break the power of him who had the power of death, that is the devil. But and then there's shameful parts of our humanity. There's shameful parts of being human. We snore, we all of this, we sweat and smell and stink and all the stuff. But it says, so Jesus is not ashamed to call them brothers. Jesus isn't ashamed of us. You may be ashamed of us, but Jesus wasn't ashamed of us. You may be ashamed of the birth process. Jesus wasn't ashamed. He created it. He's the one who created it. And he wanted to experience every part of our lives. He wanted to experience everything we go through. The pain, the sorrow. That's why he became a human being. To know exactly how hard it is to be tempted. To know how hard it is to wake up every morning and have to live a hard life and to work and to pay bills. It says he's not ashamed to call us brothers. So yeah, that's a good question. That's a great question because it's true. He came to Bethlehem to be born. And this is an amazing prophecy. It was written 700 years before Jesus was born. 700 years before Jesus was born, the prophet Micah said, "You, Bethlehem." He was going to be born in Bethlehem. And if we read in when this prophecy was fulfilled, it was spoken 700 years before. It was written 700 years before Jesus was born. But when was it fulfilled? It was fulfilled when Jesus was born. And I'm just going to show you two passages, one in Matthew and one in Luke, that show you when this prophecy was fulfilled. It was spoken 700 years before Jesus was born. But when was it fulfilled? Let's look when it was fulfilled, because it's an amazing prophecy, an amazing prophecy about the birth of Jesus Christ. And here we go. You guys, some really good questions today. You asked some very good questions, Nasser. The birth of Jesus. What's amazing about this is that God moved the whole world government, the whole world system. God moved it in order to fulfill this prophecy. It says, in those days, Caesar Augustus, this is Caesar who lives in Rome, in Italy, okay? He was in Rome in Italy, but Rome was controlling the whole world, the same way like America controls so much of the world today. But this was like the empire that controlled the whole, most of the world at the time. They were so powerful. Huge empire, the Roman Empire. In those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. A census, I'm not sure what it is in Arabic, is where you count the people. You count how many people. America's doing it right now. There's a census going on to count how many people are in America. And so they wanted to do a census of the whole Roman world. The Roman world was huge. It included Italy, Spain, Egypt, Algeria, Morocco, Israel, Jordan. Well, it wasn't Jordan back then. Syria, all of those areas, Lebanon, the whole, all the way to like India. It was huge, an enormous empire. He wanted to count how many people are in the whole Roman Empire. And so in those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. This was the first census that took place while Quirinius was governor of Syria. So he's giving you some very detailed historic information. It tells you exactly when this happened. And everyone went to their own town to register. Now, if you know the story of Mary and Joseph lived in Nazareth. And if you've lived in Palestine, you know Nazareth, Nasra, في الشمال, بعيد عن بيتلحم. بعيد عن بيتلحم. كانوا في الناصرة. They were in Nazareth, far away from Bethlehem. But the decree came from Rome, the most powerful ruler in the world, that everybody should be counted. So they had to go back to their hometown, their original hometown. It would be like if I had to go back to Der de Buen. I'm here in Los Angeles, but in order to be counted, if the governor, the president said, you all got to go back to your hometown, I have to go back to Der de Buen so they can count me, So anyway, so Joseph went up from the town of Nazareth, Nasra fil Jalil in Galilee, to Judea, to Bethlehem, to the town of David. Joseph, this is Mary's husband, went to the town of Nazareth in Galilee, to Judea, to Bethlehem, the town of David, because he belonged to the house and line of David, Dahoud. He went there to register with Mary, who was pledged to be married to him and was expecting a child. يعني رجعوا لبيت لحم عشان الcensus, because of the census. God moved the whole world government to get them to go back to Bethlehem to fulfill the prophecy. Who was pledged to be married, and she was expecting a child. While they were there, the time came for the baby to be born, and she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in clothes and placed him in a manger because there was no guest room available for them. You know, Nasser, listen to this. You know, he was born عند المزود تبع الحيوانات. تعرف وين بيحطوا الحمير؟ هو كان هناك. There was no room at the inn. That means ما كانش في مكان في الفندق. ما كانش في مكان في الفندق. There was no room in the hotel. There was no room in the hotel. So they had to sleep outside. Look where Jesus was born. He was born in the donkey, where the donkeys were. He was born in the donkey. تعرف وين بيحطوا الحمير؟ هناك انولد المسيح. عند الحيوانات. العيب والفقر. كم واحد فقير مولود نفس الشيء. أنا كنت أعرف ناس في غزة عايشين عنده عيلة وأولاد عايشين عند القبور. كانوا عايشين عند القبور. I used to know people in Gaza, and they were living in the graveyard. Their kids were born there. Jesus came to be born in a donkey stall because there was no room at the hotel. The world didn't have room for Jesus, just like many hearts don't have room for Jesus. Well, that's in Matthew. Beautiful passage, amazing. No, I'm sorry, that was Luke. Now let's look in Matthew. In Matthew, it says, when King Herod heard this, okay, what happened is that there were some kings from Iraq who came. The three wise men came, and they said they were looking for the king of the Jews because they saw his star. And there's a prophecy about that too. We'll talk about that sometime. And King Herod heard this, and he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, these are the Jewish people, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. And the Jewish priests told him, in Bethlehem of Judea. They replied, for this is what the prophet has written. So the Jews knew about this. They knew that the Messiah was going to be born in Bethlehem. It says, but you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means the least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler who will be the shepherd of my people Israel. And then it says, Herod, this was the evil king of Palestine back then, of the Holy Land, called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time that the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me so that I too may go and worship him. Of course, Herod didn't want to worship him. He wanted to kill him because he thought he was the king and he didn't want no other kings. So Jesus was never welcome. When he was born where the donkeys are. He was born where the animals are. You know, because there's no room for him. The world never makes room for Jesus. He's an uninvited savior. And the message of the gospel is an uninvited message about an uninvited savior. So if people reject you, they rejected Jesus first. When he came, there was no room for him in the hotel. He had to go be born where the animals were. When he came, Herod wanted to kill him because they didn't want another king. So Jesus was never welcome. We preach an uninvited message about an uninvited savior. And the world didn't have room for him. There's no room for him in the motel. There's no room for him in to be the king because Herod wanted to kill him. And he had to flee to Egypt. And many people, they don't have room for him in their hearts because their hearts are so full of garbage. Their hearts are so full of everything else, themselves, but they don't have room for Jesus. So many people don't have room in their hearts, just like there is no room for Jesus at the inn. What does it say here? And while they were there, the time came for the baby to be born. She gave birth to a firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in clothes and placed him in a manger because there was no guest room available for them. There was no room in the hotel. Is there room in your heart? Is there room in your life for Jesus? A lot of people don't have room for Jesus because they have everything else in their lives. They have their family, they have their children, they have their grandchildren, they have their money, they have their plans, they have their future, they have their education, they have their business, but they don't have, and there's no more room in their heart. There's no more room. They and themselves, most of all, the number one idol, the self. You know, some people have devils, some people have demons too. You know, some people have magic, they have other religions, but there's no room for Jesus in their heart. And so Jesus has to go outside where the donkeys are because there's no room for him. And the world never had room for Jesus. The world never had room for Jesus. But we have to make room in our hearts for him. And this prophecy was spoken by the prophet Micah 700 years before Jesus was born. 700 years before he was born. The prophet Micah said, you know, look what the prophet Micah said. He says, but you, Bethlehem Ephrathah, though you are small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come for me one who will be ruler over Israel, whose origins are from of old, from ancient times. You know, there's two amazing prophecies. Number one, that he was born in Bethlehem. And, it's, you know, that he was born in Bethlehem. You know, there was tens of thousands of cities and villages in the world back then. But the Bible predicted the prophet Micah predicted exactly the city where Jesus would be born. And the Jews knew it because when the Magi came, they said he would be born. When Herod asked, they said he would be born in Bethlehem. They knew that the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem. Of all the thousands of cities in the world, the Bible told exactly the city where Jesus would be born. And to this day, Bethlehem is considered the city where Jesus was born. To this day, even when the Palestinian Authority took over Bethlehem, they acknowledge, they don't touch Knesset el-Mahid. Why? Because that's where Jesus was born. That's what they believe is Jesus was born. But he was born in Bethlehem. And and the prophet predicted it 700 years before Jesus was born. It was predicted that he was born. You know what this proves to you? Proves to you that this book is from God. Only God could tell the future. Only God knows the future. And this book tells the future so many times with so much detail. It told you exactly the city, this tiny little city. It wasn't a big city. It wasn't like New York. It wasn't like Berlin. It wasn't like London. It was this tiny little village. And even to today, it's still a tiny village. It's not a huge city at all. And it was a very tiny little village back then. It's just like a little village next to Jerusalem. Its importance is that it was close to Jerusalem. It was such a tiny little city. And yet, that's what the prophet Micah said, that he would be born there in this tiny little village back there. And and look what God did. He moved the Roman Empire. He moved the Roman Empire. The Roman emperor said, okay, everybody go back to your town. So for the census, he moved the whole government of the world to take Mary and Joseph back to Bethlehem so that Jesus would be born in Bethlehem to fulfill this prophecy. And it was fulfilled. It was fulfilled exactly like the prophet said. And so, but there's another part of this prophecy. There's two parts of this prophecy. And now the first part is that where he will be born, his humanity. But this verse has both his humanity and his deity. That he is man, a man who was born in Bethlehem, born of a woman in Bethlehem. But it also says that he's God. Why? Whose going forth is from of old, from ancient times. You know what? That's translated differently in different Bibles, you know, because it comes from the Hebrew. It comes from the Hebrew. And let me just tell you what that means, because that is an amazing, amazing prophecy right there. Amazing prophecy, you know, because you have both natures of Jesus Christ, that he is both God and man in this passage. And the human part is that he was born in Bethlehem. But the divine part is that the human part is where he was coming to. The divine part is where he came from. The divine part is where he came from. Olem. Olem in Hebrew. Perpetual, everlasting, ancient, evermore, eternal. You see what he's telling us? Where is he coming to? He's coming to Bethlehem. Where did he come from? He came from eternity. He came from Al-Azal. He came to Bethlehem. He was born in Bethlehem. And the prophet, 700 years before he was born, the prophet said, "You, O Bethlehem," he came to Bethlehem. And God moved the Roman Empire to have a census to force so that Mary and Joseph would leave Nazareth and go to Bethlehem. So they fulfilled the prophecy. And he was born in Bethlehem. Exactly the tens of thousands of cities in the world at the time, he was born in, it's specified. The prophet Micah said it would be in Bethlehem, and the Jews knew it. But you know, that's the humanity of Jesus, the human. That's the human. He was born in Bethlehem. But the rest of the prophecy is about where he came from. It came from eternity. Here it's translated ancient times. But in another way of saying that is from eternity. He's from everlasting. I just want to see how it says it in Arabic. I'd like to just read it in Arabic, how it says it. It's in Hosea chapter 5, 700 years before Jesus was born. He predicted this. He predicted that Jesus, it's not Hosea, it's Micah, sorry. I always get the minor prophets. I always get them mixed up just because I'm not as knowledgeable as I should be about the minor prophets. Here it is, Micah. Let me read it to you, what it says in Arabic. Okay. He would be born, he'd be ruler over Israel, whose origins are from of old, from ancient times. And listen to what it says in Arabic. Okay, listen to what it says. Okay. Yakim alik hasara. Okay, wait a second. Okay. I'm sorry, got to start with verse 2. I'm reading verse 1 here. وَيُخْرُجْ لِي مِنْ يُصْبَحْ مَلَكٍ ملك في إسرائيل وأصله his origin منذ القديم منذ الأزل. I like the Arabic better than the English. I like Arabic better than the English. أصله منذ القديم منذ الأزل. His origin is from of old, from eternity past, from eternity. وأصله منذ القديم منذ الأزل. So the man Jesus, the prophet predicted, would be born in Bethlehem. But God, the Word who became man, is from eternity. I like the Arabic better than the English here, man. Look what it says. Look what it says. وَأَصْلُهُ مُنذ الْقَدِيمِ مُنذ الْأَزَلِ. النبي اتنبأ 700 سنة قبل مجيء المسيح إنه المسيح راح يولد في بيت لحم. هيك مكتوب. لكن بتحكي عن أصله. يعني هو كان موجود قبل الولادة. كان موجود قبل ما انولد. وأصله منذ القديم منذ الأزل. Wow. I like that in Arabic. العربي أحسن من الإنجليزي. I like that in Arabic better than English. It says that his going forth, he came from eternity, which means what? It means he is eternal. Huwa azali, huwa abadi. He is not created. He is before time. He was not created. That means he is the creator. And so in this one little prophecy, O you Bethlehem Ephratah, though you are small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come to me one who will be ruler over Israel, whose origins are from of old, from ancient times. The Arabi is better. Aslahu min al-qadim, min al-azal, min al-azal. Al-azal is eternity. Al-azal is eternity. That's what it's saying. Jesus is from eternity. Humanity was born in Bethlehem. That was his beginning of humanity. The beginning of his humanity, his introduction to the world, was in Bethlehem. It's in Palestine today. You can go see. It's there in the Church of the Nativity. But his origin, his self, his deity, his godhood was from eternity. Both are in this prophecy. Amazing prophecy. Amazing prophecy. Amazing prophecy. And my cousin Nasser asked, he says, couldn't he come down from Days of Eternity? That's just such an amazing prophecy. Oh my gosh, it's such an amazing prophecy. What's so amazing about it is that the prophecies are so detailed in the Bible. It proves that this book is from God. It proves that this book is alive. This book breathes. This book breathes. It has the Spirit of God in it. If you read it, it will revive your dead spirit. This will feed your hungry spirit. Come to Jesus now. Read this book. Read the prophecies. The prophecies in this book prove scientifically that this book is from God. It has to be from somebody outside of time and space. Only someone from outside of time and space could know the future. So detailed. And, I thank you, Nasser, for your great question. Because Nasser asked, couldn't he just come down without being born? Going through the gross, kind of gross, going through the birth process, being born, going through, the blood and all the mess of being born. But, it gave me a chance to read this beautiful passage. Since the children have flesh and blood, he too shared in their humanity. He too shared in their humanity. That's our God. That's Jesus. That's our God. That's Jesus. He loves us so much. He went through all that just to experience life the way we do, with all its foibles, with all its mess, with all the problems. He wanted to know what it's like and to experience it so that he can represent us before God. Wow. I love this passage, man. Anyway, come to Jesus today. Come to Jesus. Come to Jesus. Say, Jesus, help me. Jesus, forgive me. Jesus, come into my heart. Jesus, help me. Jesus, forgive me. Jesus, come into my heart. Jesus, help me. Jesus, forgive me. Jesus, come into my heart. He loves you. I love you. Thank you for those of you who are on with me. And I hope to see you in the future.